Ooh. Hi, I'm Erin Lucy, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my June reads wrap up, so talking about everything I read in the past month. I feel so far away. The beginning of the month, the first book I read was Stuck With You. I think it's called Stuck With You by Ali Hazelwood. The next novella, which I don't know why I did this to myself. I didn't like the last one. I read Under One Roof last month. That's about one of these three friends, so each novella is about one of the three friends in this group who are all like did their PhDs, I think, at the same place. And this one's about Sadie, who's a civil engineer, and she meets this guy. I think his name is Eric. I'm gonna be honest, I barely even remember. But they're stuck on this elevator together, and they're kind of like it flashes between the elevator and them kind of trying to have a conversation in the elevator, and then this like date kind of adventure that they went on a few weeks before that. And here's the thing, I don't know, since The Love Hypothesis, the novellas for me, I guess I just feel like they are too wrought with the enemies to lovers, like, but like true hate, or just like, I don't know, unnecessary hate. That's probably what it is. And just kind of misunderstandings that to me seem like so ridiculous. And I know that's like part of things in a trope, and I'm like cool with it, and I can vibe with it if it is like believable. But I feel like some of these have just been so like preventable misunderstandings, or like, I don't know. It just like has felt for some reason really kind of silly and ridiculous. So I have not been loving it, but I don't know. At this point, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna continue reading these novellas, but I already did it to myself once, so we'll see. I'm not gonna say much more, there's not much more to say. It's a novella, so it's pretty short, but just not my vibe right now. Next was She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker-Chan, and I really liked this one. It is about this girl who is growing up in like 1300s Mongol ruled China, and there's a lot of history, but there's also like a little bit of magical realism kind of, and she very early on in life, basically her village, her family's all destroyed, which is very sad. There's a lot of like pretty dark sides to this book, but she takes on the identity of her brother, because it's a lot easier to be a man and to go move up in the ranks of things being a man. And so it's all about her adventure, experience, living in that world disguised as a man. And I thought it was really great. There's a lot of interesting like female empowerment. I really like the relationships. I will say my only like hesitation with it is it did feel very slow, and a lot of like politics, just kind of like slow stuff, slowly doing something like very also like war, surrounding war and different decisions to be made. So it felt a little slow at times, but overall I really liked it. I thought it was super well done. So yeah, that was She Who Became the Sun. The next one I read during our Yellowstone trip, and I also bought it in West Yellowstone, The Guide by Peter Heller. This is like, on the cover they call it a literary thriller, and it has a little bit like dystopian vibes, but also I bought it for like the Yellowstone-ish, like outdoorsy kind of vibe. This whole thing takes place in Colorado, which is actually funny because I'm from Colorado, but was reading this up in Yellowstone. Essentially, this guy Jack gets hired as a fly fishing guide at this like fancy resort in this tiny Colorado town, and he goes and thinks it'll be a good experience, wants to get away from his like family and home situation for a bit, and stuff is weird. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. There's like cameras. I'm not gonna say too much, but there's a lot of like weird things that makes the whole place seem very sus. So he's like got all these questions, not really sure what to do or what is exactly going on there. The backstory is like the world, it's kind of now, I mean, he wrote this like 2021, I think, or during 2020, and basically I think took like the COVID scenario a little bit further. So there's a lot of viruses, specifically COVID, but these wealthy people go to fly fish here and kind of get away from that. But there's all sorts of like when they go into town, you know, there's a lot of testing, a lot of things that like we see in daily life. So that was kind of interesting. And yeah, so there's this big mystery, like what is going on here? Things are not exactly what they seem. The guests, there's like mixed. Some guests seem to have no idea what's going on and others seem to be involved in it. There's a lot of weird stuff. So I'll stop there so I don't ruin anything, because it was kind of an interesting mystery. I will say this was not my favorite. I didn't really vibe with his writing too. I liked it for the vibes of being like, you know, out in the country doing the outdoorsy thing, but there's a lot of it that just like wasn't really my favorite, and I like things were tied up at the end, but I felt like the pacing was a little funny. So I will say that. The one other thing was just that part of why I bought this book, there was kind of a quote on the back that talked about it being as inspiring as A River Runs Through It. And I love that book. I'm not a huge like fly fishing person, but like I love that book. I thought it was so well written. The descriptions of the scenery, of like what it means to be outdoors and interacting outside was really incredible. I read it like years and years ago, but so I thought this would be decent, and it definitely, that comparison I did not feel like was super warranted. But the guide, if you're into that kind of super outdoorsy mystery, but definitely was not my fave. Next, I also started while I was on vacation, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And I'm a huge Emily Henry fan. I've read Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation, and those are definitely some of my favorite romance books. This one is about Nora, and she is not an editor, she's an agent, and Charlie is an editor. And they both live in New York City, kind of got very the city life going on. And Nora's sister decides that she wants to take a vacation with her, and for 3 weeks they're gonna go down to like a little town in North Carolina called Sunshine Falls, which is the location of a book that she has recently been involved with. So a lot about books, love that part. The small town was really cute, but it was also very like, the whole thing kind of criticizes a little bit and makes fun of like the small town trope, especially small town romance, you know, like guy from the city goes to small little town, meets the country girl, falls in love, like breaks up with his girlfriend back in the big city, who's just like go, go, go. And it's funny because there's like a lot of referencing and kind of making fun of those tropes, because Nora, apparently that happens to her multiple times, where like her boyfriend goes and meets someone new in some really remote location. So it's this funny thing to her and the reader as well. I thought that was super fun also, if you like to read and like books. I actually ended up really loving this book. I wasn't sure, I feel like I've heard really mixed things about it, but this is my favorite of hers so far. And yeah, I just loved it. I thought it was really well written. I thought the relationship was super like realistic, but also like that fun romance that you want from a book like this. And I really liked it. Like I didn't think anything was too like crazy or blown out of proportion. Both characters had like interesting backstories and not, I don't know, I just thought it was like really well done. Probably, actually definitely my favorite romance that I've read this year. I really love The Love Hypothesis, but I think I like this better. Because in The Love Hypothesis, I really couldn't get over the whole student-professor relationship, partially because I am in academia, and that was like a little bit weird to me. But I did love that book. Love this one more. And I just thought it was really great. I haven't really looked at other reviews, but I have heard that people felt mixed about it. Some people didn't like this as much as her others. I'm not sure why. I thought it was fantastic. So I highly recommend it. It was super fun. All right, so next is The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. Absolutely amazing. My favorite book that I read this month. It's from a couple of points of view and time periods, so it spans a couple of generations. I believe it starts with Ada, who is in London with her dad, and then it flashes back to her dad Kostas and mom Daphne, their life at several different points in time in Cyprus, in the Mediterranean, and it's the story of both family trying to figure out where you come from, also forbidden love. Daphne and Kostas, their relationship is very forbidden and looked down upon in their community because one is Greek and one is Turkish, and it talks a lot about conflict and their relationship. I loved all the characters, the time period, just like the voice and the writing were so beautiful. There's also a lot of nature in this book. I really love, there's like these chapters of points of view from this fig tree, and it sounds like it could be super cheesy, but I loved it. It was very anthropomorphized, but I really liked it. There's this whole aspect of nature and climate change and considering nature in like the web of life, of human life. I thought it was so good. It's hard to even really explain what it's about, but it's essentially kind of figuring out how their relationship, Daphne and Kostas' relationship, developed, and also Ada trying to figure out her place as their daughter, but she did not grow up on Cyprus. There's all this history and what it means to have like trauma from your parents, but also trying to discover yourself and who you are. There were also some incredible descriptions of food. That was also really amazing. I just love this book. I thought it was so good, and I highly recommend it. I do feel like it's probably one of my favorites that I've read this year so far. So just super well written, and I don't know, I loved the voice, the imagery, the messages, and like what people were dealing with at each time period. So yes, highly recommend The Island of Missing Trees. Oh yeah, I didn't really mention before, but we're in our new place. We moved, so I'm in a new filming setup. We'll see how it goes. I'm trying it out today. May change in the future, but our house is much smaller, so it's kind of hard to find a good setup. But yeah. Okay. Next volume in Spy Family, volume 3. So just generally, this one's about this guy, the first one's about this guy who is a spy and has given this mission that involves him finding family, and he finds his daughter at an orphanage and finds mom. It's kind of bizarre, but it's actually super wholesome and fun, and I love this one. I think actually even more than the first two. It's just really good. I love manga. The art is awesome. The stories are always, I feel like, really unique and interesting. And this one is especially fun. I also started watching the anime this past week, and that's also fantastic if you don't want to read the manga. It follows pretty true, and it's really well done. So right now it's only subbed in English, but so cute. Worth it. Very wholesome if you want something like wholesome to brighten your day. So, Spy Family. And then last but not least is The Cabinet by Eun-soo Kim. And this one took me all month to read. I think I actually started at the end of last month. And it's a very bizarre book. I picked this one up. I'd never heard anything about it, never seen anyone mention it or anything. Picked it up like beginning of last month, or maybe no, it was actually the end of April, I think, at Barnes & Noble, and it intrigued me because it's about this cabinet 13, and in the cabinet it's about these like symptomers, so these different people who have different strange, almost supernatural things that have happened to them or that they do or that they struggle with, and it's very bizarre. The whole thing is about this guy who finds the cabinet and reads through all the files, and each chapter is kind of about like one of the symptoms or about something in this guy's life, and he's really bizarre too. So by bizarre I mean like there's this one that grows like a ginkgo tree from their finger, and I'm trying to remember, oh, there's like time skippers who like jump time. There's like all these strange things, but the way it's told, it's so, I think what made it really bizarre to me is that it's told in such a realistic voice that like it sold me so well on these things being like, I almost believed these things are real even though I knew they're not. It was just like kind of crazy in that sense. But it's also really interesting because I think in each of these stories there's some like commentary on humans and how we interact and live, and like life, pondering the meaning of life. I always love that, my favorite kind of book. So I did end up really liking this. I think my only like drawback to this one, it was like a little bit sad and depressing at times, more so than I expected, but I really loved it. And if that's the kind of thing you're into, the other thing about like the style, it's kind of this weird style that's a mix of, like, it almost feels like short stories, but it's not. Like, it's like this guy is kind of going through his life and there is like an underlying story, but there's a lot of like tangents in each of the chapters where they might talk about something like completely unrelated. So that's another bit of a warning, but I love that one too. So I would say this one, The Island of Missing Trees, is definitely my favorite from the month. And then The Cabinet. Actually, I don't know though. Book Lovers really did it for me. So those were my three favorites. Spy Family was great as always. And then She Who Became the Sun. And then the other two, not my favorites. So that's my reading month for June. As always, like, I never know what to, to talk about my feelings on how much I read, because I would never want anyone to feel like they have to read more. For me, I definitely just like hold myself to my own goals and standards. I definitely feel like this past month I did not read as much as I was hoping, especially vacation. I'm always like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna read so much. This vacation was really dramatic. You can watch my Yellowstone vlog if you want, but I also just didn't get as much reading done as I had hoped. We were moving, and I feel like I've been trying to juggle a million things. So I'm hopeful for next month. We'll see. Still read some great ones, and I think if you can do any reading at all, it's great. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.